Welcome to the Rise Network podcast show, a podcast dedicated to help you reach your dream lifestyle through investing in real estate. We're going to be sitting down with new, intermediate, and experienced investors to talk all about real estate and how it has changed their lives. If you're looking to scale your portfolio or even just get into real estate investing, you're in the right place. Make sure to tune in. Hello, everyone. You are listening to the Rise Real Estate Investing Podcast with your host, Austin Ye and
Mayu. What's going on, everybody? Austin, your turn this time. What's new, man?
This time, it's not like...
No. Sometimes you flip it back to me.
Yeah, but forget the last 5 or 6 months since I've been going first, right? Is it every 5 months then we get to hear Mayu go first?
I was thinking I'm going to start doing the intro. We'll see. Kick you off. That's fine.
No, but on my end right now, so I was continuing off of the journey of the flip that I keep on talking about. So everything was wrapped up. Things have been staged. It looks gorgeous. And then we list. Offer presentation rolls around and we actually don't get the price that we want. And from time to time, this does happen.
Dude, it happens all the fucking time. Every single time I'm trying to sell flip.
And I don't know if we use the right strategy for this particular property in terms of listing, because when you're dealing with higher end product, I think those clientele may not want to bid 100, 150K, 200K above asking. We might have listed it too low. But we had a ton of demand for the property. We had 40 plus people walk in the property before offer presentation date. And I sat down with my agent, Waylon, who's partner on this flip with me, and we kind of just talked it through, figuring out what we could do going forward. And we're planning to relist it. I believe it should have been relisted right now. Here's something funny is that someone messaged us saying, I'm interested at this price or a little bit lower, which we actually listed it a bit higher than what we wanted and for room for negotiation. But they didn't participate in the offer presentation because their assumption was that it was going to go something ridiculously over and they didn't want to waste anyone's time, including their client or their own. And so now we listed that out, give or take what we want to make the profit that we're looking for. We have individuals reaching out and still booking. Obviously, the booking's not going to be 40 plus people like it was originally, but we have more serious buyers.
Qualified buyers. Yeah.
And it made me think, it's obviously it's not a good thing to take things off and relist. It's going to have some sort of stigma.
Yeah.
However, maybe we approached it with the wrong strategy for this particular property. I don't have any fear that we're going to sell it or not. And worst comes to worst, Waylon and I were calculating it as a refi. And I know it's not the ideal thing to refi something at $1 million plus.
Yeah.
But our appraisal came in at pretty much very close to 1.1 million.
Let's say you do refi, you would just Airbnb it?
Yeah, that would be the only thing to make it work. So when we calculated the total expenses, and I was being very aggressive with the expenses as well, on a 30-year amortization, we're looking at about 4.4K to 4.5K in rental revenue to break even.
Right.
So
because for one tenant, it's a lot of risk.
That's a lot. Yeah. I don't think you're going to get a tenant looking to rent something out at 4.5, even 5K, right? That's not happening. So Airbnb would be the best avenue. And very fortunately, this is within a 5-minute drive and even walking distance to a lot of the different hiking trails in Hamilton. So I'm sure you know that Hamilton has 2, 3, 4 hiking trails. This is beside all of the golf clubs and hiking trails. So there is a game plan for that. But it's not ideal. The last thing we want to do is hold a mortgage that is
a backup.
3.5. Exactly. It's a backup. And we'll have, I would say, probably 97 or 98% of all of our money out, including paying back the private lenders and the interest incurred. But it's not the situation that we want to go down. But at least there's that if we absolutely need to.
Yep. And I think we're basically in the same boat. We listed it, in my opinion, a little bit aggressive, right? But I was it's doable. Then we had an offer on the weekend and it was way lower. I was not a fucking chance, but you know what? I'll counter these guys. And I basically I told my realtor, I'm look, counter them and let them know if they want to counter back to this, it's got to be an aggressively fast closing. Otherwise, I'm happy to just stay on the market and just wait it out. So that person fell off. They were just nah, it's not going to work, whatever. And then we do have another offer accepted on it as of this morning. Now, nothing's done until the check is literally in the bank account, but it's not the sales price that we wanted, but it was a healthy profit margin regardless. And It was more so they gave us closing for November 19th, which is
very
that 3 weeks away. And we have another flip closing on the buy for November 22nd. So I was like, dude, I can save on like private, like just take this cash and profit and move it towards that one. Like there's so much more behind the actual offer. I told the realtor, I'm like, you make sure they know that like, I'm not taking this because of price. Cause like, fuck, I think we're like underselling it. But like the terms were like pretty fucking good. Like all cash close in like 2.5 weeks. Like, yeah, okay. Not fuck with that.
Yeah, which is great because that benefits you because ultimately it does save you money from getting private for your next flip. So you're going to be making more money in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
And on the buyer's end, they don't mind closing quick. So they get a stellar deal. So it's like a win-win situation there.
Yeah.
And obviously the realtor is like, fuck, this sale is done. I'm moving forward with it.
Yeah. I'm going to be out of the country for like both of these transactions closing. So I got to make sure this shit happens on time. And like, I don't know, because it's kind of like nerve wracking because at the same time, if the buyer doesn't close on the buy for the flip, because November 19th to November 22nd is literally, I think, a weekend in between there. If the buyer doesn't close, we got to move money fast so that we can make sure that we close the buy still, right? So still a lot of risk, but we'll see, man. Nothing's done until cash is in the account.
Yep. That's exactly what it is. And I say the same thing for wholesale deals as well. I don't consider a property sold until deposit's collected and the property is closed because I tell you all the time why you sometimes have to push things around, postpone some of our conversations because there is an immediate fire that needs to be addressed. For example, with one of our properties, vacant possession didn't end up being vacant. And obviously now you have to smooth things out. It's a weird dynamic because you got to smooth things out with the seller, with the buyer, and with the tenant. And a lot of those parties have like differing interest, right? The seller wants to close regardless. The buyer needs it to be vacant for the flip. The tenant needs some time to leave, or maybe they don't want to leave, right? So it was just a disaster of a situation. And you will not believe this, man. We were able... So the tenant was not gone on the 29th of October. And that was the closing date. And we're able to get, like, not even planning to leave or anything. We're able to get the tenant out, all their stuff out by November 3rd. So, yeah, we're just stressing and trying to make things happen.
Did you guys pay him or not?
We didn't pay him. We got an Airbnb for him and we got him to move all of his stuff to storage. So that costed us $2.5K.
That's not bad.
It's not bad. Yeah. And the seller was not willing to push. The buyers didn't want to push because exterior renovations need to be done. Yeah. And winter's rolling around. You can't do exterior during the winter. So it was just all over the place. And pretty much the deal had to get done the week after or it was going to be a dead deal. Like no one, we couldn't get everyone to agree to a certain set of terms. So it worked out.
What was your fee?
Our fee wasn't too big. Our fee was, I think it was 12.5K. So we probably walk away with 10K.
That hurts a little bit.
Because we incurred that 12.5.
What do wholesalers pay as a legal? Like, what's a legal fee for a wholesale deal?
Less than $1,000.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of like the sell side.
Yeah, it's like $500-600, sometimes $600, depending how much work's involved, but usually around $500-600. It's not much at all.
Yeah.
But anyways, like I think we're going on and on right now. There'll be more updates next week, so don't worry, guys. There'll be a lot more Maya in Austin. Let's get into today's podcast. Today we have Gary Hibbert. You probably heard of Gary. He's been investing for over a decade, has his own podcast, has his own real estate club, and I believe is also a broker of his own real estate agent team. So has a lot going on. And he actually got started in investing in 2008 during the recession, which is quite an interesting time. And he walks us through that journey and that realization that people were getting fired left, right, and center in his job, and how he was able to use real estate to take control of his own life with almost no money. And we dive into that and we get into a very interesting topic of architecting your dream lifestyle. Because as you'll hear in this podcast, Gary doesn't work all day and night. He's kind of finished the hustle and he's able to take summer vacations off as well. 2 months off of real estate, which is quite amazing while still getting a payroll. So that's awesome stuff. You do not want to miss this episode out. I think this is the lifestyle a lot of us look to achieve, and we dive into that in today's episode. Make sure to tune in. Hello, everyone. We are joined with our very special guest, Mr. Gary Hibbert. Gary, how's everything going?
Great. Listen, thank you guys very much for having me here. And I'm looking forward to doing this with you guys. You guys are rock stars. You guys have been crushing it over the last couple of years, and it'll be fun.
Awesome, Gary. So for anyone in our guests that doesn't know you, like what's what's your background in the investment and like what you're doing today? What's the rundown?
Yeah. So, I mean, geez, where do I start? I mean, I started back in 2008 investing in real estate. I had great experience in it. And then as we started doing well, we decided to start a real estate investment club in 2010. We really still didn't know what we were doing, but we're like, you know what, let's just be completely transparent and share our story, share what we're doing with people. And so I started like a weekly blog, which I still continue to do to this day. I'm also a real estate agent. So I got my license in 2014. And then I decided to leave my full-time job, even though I still didn't have enough income coming in from the investment properties yet. But I saw that there was something there. You know, I saw that we were growing our database and our presence in the real estate investing industry. And then we decided to start another company called Deep Pockets, which is a private lending company. I know very little about it. But what I've learned over the years is to partner with people who are super, super smart. And so I've done that. And then I'm also the owner of a brokerage where we got about 112 real estate agents there. So a lot of different moving pieces, but been having a lot of fun with it. And I'm also a host for my own podcast as well, too, called Real Talk with Gary. So been having a lot of fun with this. It's been a great and enjoyable ride.
That's awesome. So you've been in real estate for a little over a decade now, and you're doing a bunch of things. You went from the investing side to building your own community and now owning several businesses within the space. Let's start down from the humble beginnings, because I think that's where most people relate to. And a lot of people kind of gloss over with more experienced investors. How did you exactly get started into real estate investing? I know you're working a corporate job. Can we dig down into that?
Absolutely. So why don't we kind of maybe get to the origins of it? So in 2008, if you guys remember, that was when they had the financial crash in the US. And so in Canada, if you remember, we didn't really have like a major crash, but there was this belief that it was coming, that this wave was coming into Canada and we were going to get hit by it really hard. And so some of the banks started preparing for that, and they started to do some changes. And so I went into work on a Monday morning, kind of minding my own business, sat down on my cubicle, saw one of my coworkers get called into the office, and he came out, and you see the look on somebody's face, like they just saw a ghost. I knew something was wrong. I was like, oh my God, this guy just got let go. And so all day long, they were firing people, they were letting people go. And we had just recently purchased our kind of dream home at the time, and had 2 young kids. And I'm like, I need this job. If I get let go, I'm going to lose this property. And so all day I was just kind of in this panic mode. And at 4 o'clock, the manager comes out and he goes, all right, everybody that's left, you guys are safe. And I remember driving home in the car by myself, and I was like, never again do I ever want to feel like somebody is in control of my financial future or freedom. But, I didn't really kind of know what to do. And so tried a whole bunch of different businesses, got into Forex, got into stock trading, got into commodities, selling wheat, oil, soya beans, all that fun stuff. And I was putting myself into more debt. And so this is where everything kind of changed. And why I decided to go down the path of real estate investing was I went into my financial advisor's office, and he's like, Gary, you don't know how to manage debt. And I'm like, no, get rid of all my credit cards, get rid of all my lines of credit. Because, you see that as debt, and you really didn't know. I didn't know at the time the difference between good debt and bad debt. And I'm like, yes, cut it all up. Going forward, I'm buying everything cash. I don't care. And so at that time, my primary residence had bailed me out 3 times. Now she goes out, leaves the office. I'm in there by myself. She goes to print the papers and everything and come back in for me to sign it. And so I look up on the wall and I see the index chart. Have you guys ever seen the index chart before? It's this big chart on the wall in all financial advisors' office, and shows you what the stock market has done for the last 50 years. Interest rates have done for the last. So this big, huge chart gives you a high level overview of where the economy is going. And I kind of keyed in on, and I kind of zoomed in on what inflation was doing. Didn't really know a whole lot about inflation, but I knew enough that inflation meant that whatever you bought this year, it was going to go up by a certain percentage next year. And so inflation was doing anywhere between 2% to 18, 20%. And I was like, well, hold on, if I average this out, about 5% a year. And so I did the real quick math on my phone, and I realized that my raise at work last year, the previous year, was about $1,000, which is pretty good. It's not bad, right? But it only worked out to about 1.6% based on my current income. That was when the light bulb went off. I was like, I get it. I can't outpace inflation by having a job. And that is when that whole light bulb moment went off. And I was like, well, if this home that I have has bailed me out 3 times, taken all my debt and put in my mortgage, what if I had just one more property? Just one more. How would that change my life? And that was when everything changed. That was when I was like, I got to get into real estate, right? That's kind of the humbling beginnings.
So how do you go about buying that first property? Is it just where you're just recycling capital, essentially an equity that you had built up in your primary residence into your rentals, or and then just growing organically from there? Or did you jump right into partners, OPM? Like, how'd you go about
I jumped right into partnerships. I didn't have money. I just had, took all my debt. I got rid of all my credit cards, got rid of all my lines of credit. The interesting thing too is that back in 2008, you could actually get a 40-year amortization. So I got a 40-year amortization. People are like, you're crazy. Why would you ever do that? And at the time, I didn't know really kind of why I was doing either, but I knew that I wanted to lower my payments. Yeah. I knew like it just kind of made sense to, maybe I might look better on paper, or at least, I'll have more money than month. And so by doing that, it allowed me to be able to qualify for another investment property. And what I ended up doing was partnering with a friend to buy a property that his, so here's the story. So this is crazy. So his dad and his wife were living in his home in Oshawa. They're going through a divorce. And I kind of started putting out into my network that I wanted to buy an investment property. And so my friend calls me back up, about a couple of weeks later. He goes, "Hey, were you serious about buying an investment property?" I'm like, yeah. He goes, "Okay, well, my dad's going through a divorce. He really loves his home. He wants to stay there. Can you buy it?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." And he goes, "You sure?" I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So we went and got approved. And in 2008, for a very, very small window, you could buy a home with 0% down. And so I got approved, but I didn't have any money. And so I go to my buddy, I go, "Hey, listen, you know what? Want to partner with me? Because the closing costs and everything is like $3,000. And he goes, "I don't got any money either." And I'm like, "Come on, you got to be able to scrounge up like at least $1,500. And so we both did. It was, I can't remember what it was, like $1,600 or something like that. And we partnered. And that was how I kind of got my door in my first investment property. And then right afterwards, the U.S. market kind of crashed, and they got rid of that 40-year amortization. They got rid of that whole zero down. So it was a very small window. But kind of looking back at that, Canada was going into that arena of making it very easy for almost anybody to get qualified. And luckily, they kind of pulled the reins back. So that was how I kind of got started. But at a very early stage of my career, I understood the importance of joint ventures, even though I didn't really understand it to the level that I do now, and leveraging other people's money.
That's awesome. So you did anything to make things work, and it seemed like you learned from the school of hard knocks, right? Like a couple of unfortunate events got you into real estate investing, and you took advantage of that opportunity. I love that, because in retrospect, now that I hear like, 0% down, 40-year AMs, that's a no-brainer. But at that time, it was so common for people to understand that concept that people were like, why would I ever do that? Like, I don't want to take on any debt, right? But you still were able to take advantage of that opportunity, where most people in your network were like, "Don't do it, Gary, don't do it." And you're like, "I need to get into the market one way or another." So you made it happen. Sorry, Mike, it looks like you're itching to say something.
No, I was just saying it's crazy because there's still there's rumors about the 40-year amortization coming back in today's world, which would, I think, be crazy, but it's surreal to know that it existed before, back in the 07, 08 times. And could have been pretty deadly, I guess, if everyone jumped on those 0% down approaches, right? But Gary, like, I kind of see your journey as having like these 3 tiers, right? Where you started in 08, then you reached this milestone in 2014, right? And then what you're doing today is a whole other journey that I want to make sure we talk about as well. So I'm just curious, what was that 08 to 2014, like, on a quick rundown? Like, how did you scale your portfolio? And at what point did you leave your job to do this real estate stuff full time? Because I think after that is when you really would have catapulted. And you'd already started you did a lot between 08 and 14, because you started up a club and, you did a couple of different things there, right? So.
Yeah, so good question. And I think here's where I think really the magic started to happen is, and I'll have to rewind just a little bit to then really kind of paint the picture for you. And so my brother had brought over this documentary called The Secret around maybe 2006, 2007. I can't remember her name now, but anyway, she had went on Oprah Winfrey to talk about this. So we sat down, we watched it. And when I was done, I'm like, man, this is crazy. Like you can just write stuff down and have all this wishful thinking and thinking this, all of a sudden the universe will just present things to you. And I'm like, it sounds kind of crazy, but let me try it at least. Let me at least start writing things down. Let me get a whiteboard and see if this works. And then I started listening because there was a lot of really cool things that they were talking about in that particular documentary that started opening up gateways for me. So I came across Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, all these people, and started listening to them in my car. And Jim Rohn was probably, I would say, somebody that completely shifted and changed who I am today. And I listened to him every single day in the car and just took notes, paid attention. And there was one thing that he talked about, which was this exercise of designing your life. And I'm like, can you really design your life? And so what I did was, and I'll share this with everybody because I think this is really, really important. And he goes, make the goal of writing down everything that you want, 100 things. And most people probably can't even come up with 20 things that they want in their life. And he goes, I don't care how big it is. I don't care how small it is. Who do you want to be? Where do you want to go? What do you want to see? Just everything from, paying off $1,000 credit card to buying a 10,000 square foot mansion. And so once I did that, then he goes, write a 1, 3, 5, or 10 beside it. And he goes, anything that has a 3, 5, or 10, that's like, how long will it take you to accomplish each of these goals? 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years? Everything with those large numbers, put in a drawer, don't even look at it. And everything that has a 1 beside it means you can accomplish it this year. And then that's what went on my whiteboard. Okay. So then you fast forward now, I started saying, look, maybe I should start a business. I like this real estate investment thing. Let's see where it goes. And that was the birth of Smart Home Choice in 2010. And then on that whiteboard was everything that I wanted to accomplish in that year. And I remember I'd written down that I wanted 4 investment properties. And at the end of the year, I had 4 investment properties. And that was the next biggest light bulb for me, was like, I get it. It has nothing to do with money. See, people think that you physically have to have the money. And by writing it down and realizing that certain things were now presenting itself to me in opportunities, and what I was focusing my attention on was starting to happen. And that was when I was like, you really can design a life. It's not easy. There's hard work involved in it for sure, but it's 100% possible. And so that's really where things started to change from 2010 until to where I am today. By how many homes I wanted to buy, how many, starting membership within Smart Home Choice. Do I want any real estate agents to work within my business? How many deals that I want to do every single year? Just how much income that I wanted to make? Just everything. It was just a roadmap, right? And here's the other thing as well too. I think people get caught up in wanted to see that finished product, and sometimes here's a great analogy. It's like driving to Florida at night with your headlights on. You can't see the whole entire path, but you can see enough in front of you to continue to keep driving. That's what those goals are all about. Like you know where the destination is, but you don't have to see the whole entire path.
Very true. It's kind of like what they say about, I don't remember the exact saying, but it's that saying that it's like what you can accomplish a lot more in 10 years than you think versus like the 1 year or whatever that saying is, right? So when you jumped ahead to 2014 and you were quitting your job, I'm curious, like what was your portfolio like? I know you'd mentioned earlier on that like the cash flow wasn't really enough to replace your employment income, but I guess what gave you the courage? What did you do to set you up for success when you quit your job?
Yeah. So what I had done was we made a decision, because me and my wife really kind of designed what we wanted to put in the whiteboard and really kind of grew this together. Where we said, if we get to a certain income, I'll throw a number. I'll say it was $2,500 a month. If it covered our mortgage, tax, insurance, then we would leave. We wouldn't maybe have enough food to put on the table, but we had really good neighbors, so we can always kind of knock on the door and and maybe borrow some flour.
I love the contingency
and
planning,
some sugar or whatever, right? So we had a certain goal that we said, if we hit this, then we're going to make that move. And then we also wrote down the day, the month and the year that we were going to leave. And when that happened, we were like, okay, we put it out there. Let's do it. And so it was a leap of faith. However, the leap of faith was still us packing our parachute in the back and then jumping. And it doesn't open right away, but eventually, if you design it properly, it will eventually open. And that's essentially what we did. And I think that's what people have to realize, that it's not about just, okay, well, I've made up my mind, I'm going to leave, and not really have a plan. Because you see a lot of people do that, where they're just fed up and frustrated. But you can't do that. You have to plan your escape. It's like kind of like being in jail. You got to design it. How are you doing it? What tunnels are you going through? Right. So it's no different than if you want to leave the 9-to-5 job. You can't just wake up one morning and just quit. You've got to design how you're actually going to make that exit strategy work, and know that you may not have the right amount of income where you want to be, but at least say, hey, look, this is enough. Let's do it, because I've set up all these other things and I believe that this can work. And that's essentially what we did. And the other thing as well, too, is that when we finally left, I think what you don't realize is that sometimes a 9-to-5 job takes away sometimes some of your creativity. And when you become an entrepreneur, and when you actually now go into that entrepreneurial world, all these things start to open up and the creativity really starts to flow to you. And at least that's what I found. It's scary. There's no doubt about it. But it was definitely a great experience. Honestly, I would love to do it again. So I always get excited when I see entrepreneurs leave for the first time, like where you guys are right now. And I know that the pains involved in it, because you're trying to map out your day, you're trying to map out your week and your year. You got all this extra time, and how do you do it all? And there's a lot of chaos in the beginning. But once you're able to find your footing and a system, it's fun.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. So you did have a plan when you were leaving your full-time job. You didn't blindly just get fed up and say goodbye to it. So that makes a lot of sense. There was a saying as well, a man without a plan is planning for failure, right? And I guess that's what SMART home choice is all about, like where you put the acronym SMART. Like your goals were very specific. You had a timeline in which you said, if I hit this amount of income, I'm going to leave at like maybe 3 months after. So you had everything measurable and specific, and there was no room for you to get out of that. Otherwise, you're not really keeping to your plan. So that does make a lot of sense. So I just out of curiosity, after you ended up leaving your job, what did you do for the first couple of months? Because I know it's very confusing as an entrepreneur, figuring out your work schedule, because your life isn't routine anymore, right? And I assume your businesses weren't fully started up at that very moment. So a lot of things are probably ad hoc. How did you stay motivated when you quit your job? And walk me through the first couple of months, how that experience was like. Yeah,
it was chaos. It was difficult because I didn't know how to really kind of plan out the day. And so I was busy, but busy doing things that were not productive all the time. There were productive things, obviously, don't get me wrong, but it was just everything was all over the place. And one of the things, because my wife had left her full-time job about a year earlier, and she's like, Gary, you know what you need? You need an agenda. You're just kind of flying off of the edge of your seat, and just whatever comes, you're taking it. Emails, this, text, whatever. And so that was a difficult thing, because I was being reactive as opposed to proactive. And so then now when I got the agenda was a huge game changer for me, because the agenda then tied very closely to my whiteboard. So the agenda kept me on track on a day-to-day basis, where I would write down everything that I had to do in it. And I'll kind of go through this, because I think this is important as well, too, because some agendas will have like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday in it. And I was trying to do that in the agenda, and it was so tricky, and I had a really difficult time with it, that I said, okay, screw that. What I'm going to do in the agenda, and I like writing things down, is I said to do, personal, and important. I just broke it down into 3 categories. And there's different ways of doing it, but those are the 3 things. And then notes. So those are the 4 things. So to do, personal, important, notes. And so to do was just anything that I just had to do. Personal was just personal stuff that I had to pick up. But important, the important column was everything that was tied very closely to my whiteboard. And the notes were just, if I had phone calls. Then I used my phone And the phone was a calendar entry where now I can organize my day and my week. And why the agenda is also very important, because now I can actually check things off as I'm going through the week. And then, if things would pop into my mind, I would use this agenda as a dumping ground. So if I was working on a particular task, something popped in my mind, boom, write it down. Because I always wanted my mind to be completely clean and clear of everything else, as opposed to all these things kind of happen. Oh, don't forget to do this. Don't forget to do that. And then, so by the end of the week, there's only 4 things that you can ever do with anything. You do it, right? Meaning you've checked it off. You defer it, meaning you're going to bring it into the next week. You delegate it, meaning that this is where you start building a team and people around you that you can delegate some of these tasks to, or you delete it, meaning that it really wasn't that important. So let's just get rid of that. That is what really kind of changed the trajectory of me personally and my business. It just came down to organizing my day. And when your day is organized, it's so much easier, because then you can find time within the day to relax, to take a nap, to enjoy what you're building, but then also to work very hard. And so because it's structured, as opposed to some people like, well, there's so many different things I got to do it all. And you just run out of time. And that's just called being busy, doing things for other people sometimes, where you forget about your own personal goals.
I could definitely relate to that. I don't know. I still feel like my days are very much reactive, right? Like what's coming in my email, and like, let me just address this. And then the entire day goes by. I'm like, shit, like I didn't actually work on the business like I wanted to. I just ended up spending the day like addressing stuff, right? So that's great. But you quit your job and you jumped into like all these different businesses, right? Like you started up, I think you had mentioned that you started up the private lending arm, and then you jumped into the real estate brokerage. And I'm assuming you're still buying investment properties with partners and stuff like that. How did you decide to go into these different businesses? And now as an individual with multiple businesses, like, how do you manage your time today? Because I feel like you're at an end goal for myself and Austin and multiple other investors, right? Where you want to grow this real estate portfolio, you want to leave your day job, and then what you want to do is have multiple businesses and be kind of running the show per se, right? So just curious how you structure your growth after you quit your job.
Yeah. So after we quit our job, we continued to grow our real estate investment portfolio. Then we got a point in our careers where we realized that, we'd gotten to run 19 or 20 doors, and we're like, okay, we keep buying these single family homes and converting them, because we did a lot of burrs, that how many of these properties are we going to have to buy to really get the cash flow that we really need? So then we're like, okay, well, the next way to scale this is to buy apartments. And so then me and my wife, we took a course. And then if you guys know Casey and Jedediah, so they do multifamily. They're really good friends of ours. And we're like, you know what, let me give him a call. So I reached out to him. He goes, Gary, come on. Yeah, I'll show you what I'm doing out in St. Catharines and Kitchener. So he took us around. He showed us his investment portfolio, what he did on a day-to-day basis. And we spent pretty much the whole entire day with him, which was great. And we weren't completely sold on multifamily yet, but we're like, you know what, this makes sense. We this probably is a route to take. And then we had a conversation with our accountant, and starting a corporation around that, and how do we do it all, and how do we scale it, and how do we get new investors to come in and partner with them. And so I went to a Christmas party that year with one of my mentors, Dave Butler from Butler Mortgages, and we were having a conversation. He goes, Gary, so what's on the agenda? What's new? What's your goals for next year? And I go, I think I'm going to get into multifamily investing. And I think he realized that I wasn't super excited when I said it. And he goes, well, that's one way of doing it. And that kind of opened up another conversation. And it's like, well, what do you mean? And he goes, well, what about private lending? And so that kind of stayed on my mind. A few weeks went by, we went into January. Let's just have a conversation about this private lending. I'd heard about it, but I never really kind of dove into it. And he explained to me how it all worked. And I'm like, you know what? Instead of continuing to build doors, why don't I now start to lend my money out like the banks do? And because I've built the wealth, I've built the portfolio, how many more doors do I really need? And I think people get caught up in when they're investing in real estate, they got to keep on getting more doors and more doors and more doors. Where it was more, well, hold on a second, why don't we slow down, maybe offload a few of these doors? We now have a large amount of capital that we can lend out. Because if you can lend out, let's say $1 million, well, then what type of cash flow are you getting? And yes, I get it. You're not getting a mortgage paid down. Yes, I get it. You're not getting the appreciation. But if you still have a number of doors here and you can still lend out your money over here, well, then have you not then found success? Have you not then now found what you were looking for, as opposed to getting caught up in that hamster wheel? Because I've learned over the years by doing these podcasts and learning from a lot of people who are successful, some of these people get burnt out. Some of these people realize when they're kind of getting to where they thought they wanted to get to, they're no longer happy because there's all these moving pieces. And so what we tried to do was then to untangle some of all of these moving pieces to now focus on, well, what do we really enjoy doing? And that's why Deep Pockets kind of came into existence, of saying, yes, this is another avenue that we can do, but we don't have to continue to grow this business. Because here's what I also found it as well, too, is that I don't really love real estate investing. So then if I don't really love real estate investing, then why am I continuing to build all these doors? What I love doing is this, the podcast, sharing my story, learning from other people, mingling with people that are successful, learning what has made them happy and what has made them unhappy. I think that's what it's all about. And so it's okay to sometimes pivot and change your position. And that's why we kind of started Deep Pockets. It really made, I think, the most sense for us to free up our time. And I'll kind of finish it off with this, which I think was important, is that we do mini retirements. We take July and August off, and we take December and January off. Yes, I can make way more money in those months and continue to keep growing the business. But I made it very clear to myself and my family and my partners that we don't work in those months. Now, I do a little bit of work. There's obviously some things that I got to continue to keep doing to keep things going, but it's literally down to like 4 to 6 hours a week during those times. And at that time, I bought a cottage. I spend time up there with my friends and my family. We're on the boat. We're enjoying life. And then come September again, boom, we're back into the grind again. And that is how I think you can design a life,
I love that. So a lot of people, when they get into real estate investing, and I want to say the vast majority of people are, at least with the younger audiences, they get into it with the mindset of financial freedom. I want to travel. I want to do this. I want to do that.
Yep.
But then they tend to forget about it, because once you're in the community, one thing that people start promoting is mindset, which is great, but it's to the point where it's always growth mindset, nonstop growing. And you start forgetting about your goals, right? Like, we watch all of these success podcasts. You got to do whatever it takes. You got to continue growing. You want to be a billionaire. And that's not really the true goal for everyone, although they might fool themselves to think it is, because they forget about their why, like what brought them in there in the first place, right? Then their headaches multiply. They start burning out and they lose the passion. So I think it was very important that you realize that, like, yeah, I could go into multifamily, but I got into this in the first place to design a lifestyle of freedom, in which if you get into multifamily, sure, you can make a ton more money, but is it really worth all of that extra headache? No, not really, right? There's another path to it. And that's the path that you explored. I think that relates to me a lot, because I'm starting to kind of feel that part of the journey where it's like, okay, I've acquired doors. I'm still going to acquire doors, not at the pace that I did before, right? I have my own business as well. But I still feel behind the 8 ball. Like, I'm seeing people make progress. So like, okay, like, Austin, what can you do to continue making those leaps and bound progress? Like, then I realized, like, do I really need to do that? Right now, all I need to do is take little steps forward, because I've had that strong foundation and base. So I really relate to what you said there.
Well, so I think we have a great real estate community, right? Like, I think everyone within the community, for the most part, we start to eventually meet one another. Like, this is my first time meeting Gary, and hasn't met me before either. But I think a lot of people, it's a very small community of real estate investors, right? But I do think the community, like you guys have both said, is very much growth or stagnate. Like, if you're not growing, you're stagnating, right? And I don't really know if that's the right answer or the right mentality for everyone. Not to point holes in our community, right? I think it's a great community, but I do think people take like the mini retirements, like what Gary's talking about, right? And Gary, do you find that like when you come back from those mini retirements that you're more productive, or do you find that you then need to kind of ease back into things?
Or you got to ease back into things for sure, because when you're partying for 2 months, you got to ease back into it. But you're right. You bring up a good point that people like, oh, you got to be growing. You got to keep growing all the time. You know what? Sometimes in those quiet moments, sometimes when you're relaxing and not doing anything, there's a lot of growth in that as well too. There's a lot of great ideas that are coming to my mind, and I'm still jotting them down. I'm like, hey, that's a good idea. Because here's the other thing as well, too, because people get so caught up in the retirement that when they retire when they're 65, I said, man, my body's not able to handle the sea-doos that well at that age. So why not do it while I'm still young? Why not enjoy it when I'm still young? You know, I mean, look, I'm getting a bit older now, but at least I still have the energy and the vitality to continue to keep enjoying life. So why not? It's okay. I personally think it's okay to slow down. Not everybody likes to slow down, and that's fine. I think you've got to find what resonates with you, what resonates with your friends and your family, and that circle that you've got around you. And so I just kind of this is the life that I've created. I know that some people may look at it differently, and that's fine. We're all different. We're all here for different reasons, and we have different goals and aspirations. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, there's certain things that I've learned even when I interviewed you, Austin, that I'm like, that is a great idea. Let me incorporate that into what I'm doing, or watching what maybe, you know, an Andrew Hines is doing, or Mark Loeffler, or whoever it may be. And like, this is great. Not really big on this. And then kind of tie that into the path that I'm on. And that's what I enjoy.
Let me ask you this, Gary. Yeah. You mentioned a bit earlier that you weren't a fanatic of real estate investing, like actually the operational side of things, right? Which is why you slowed down in it. Can you be successful in real estate without necessarily being passionate in it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I've realized and understand that it's just a vehicle. So it's not to say that I won't buy anymore. If I think I need to, maybe I will. But it's just a vehicle. Like, I don't wake up and I'm excited about, like, look at these properties that I own, the bricks and the mortar and the roofs, and I got to deal with some tenants, and maintenance issues, and look, a tenant left, and those are all moving pieces that are not super enjoyable if you really think about it. Why are we doing it? You're doing it for income, for wealth building, and to enjoy life. Isn't that what we're doing it for? So then I think it's important not to lose sight of that. And I think people do. So now if I'm like, well, hey, you know what? I want to maybe do something. I put on my whiteboard and I don't maybe have enough income or enough money for it. Maybe I might go buy another investment property, or maybe I'll lend out more money, or whatever it may be. But it's a vehicle. I've never put anybody in my car and drove around to all my investment properties and say, look at this property. This is my baby. I love it. Mwah. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, at least not for me. Maybe there are some people that are passionate about it, but for me personally, I'm not. And I think it's just important to have this conversation for people to know and understand that it's okay that if you're not passionate about real estate investment, but do use it as a vehicle. Because I'll touch on something that's important, is that what is happening right now in the world, and that's been happening since, say, since 71, when Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard. We now have this fiat currency that is being devalued. And once I understood that, then I used real estate because it was the best way to protect my wealth. That's why I'm doing it. It's protecting my wealth. It's allowing my kids to be able to have an education whenever they want, wherever they want. That's why I'm doing it, right? And now with the monetary policy and the fiscal policy that they're doing, they're even stealing more of your energy and more of your time by this invisible tax called inflation. And people that are not educated, their wealth are being stolen from them. That's why I do what I do.
So I think that was a lot. I think the one thing I wanted to ask you about after is, so you went to private lending and then eventually you went into the brokerage side as well, right? Yeah. So are you an active like realtor, or how did you end up in the brokerage side? And I guess the bigger question is, are you essentially like bringing in partners to handle the operations? Are you actively involved in operations, or how do you structure your business? Out of curiosity, really.
Okay, yeah, that was a lot there. So I am a co-owner of a brokerage. My partners actually reached out to me because they saw what I was doing with my community with real estate investors. Mm-hmm. And so I went out and I did a presentation to their realtors about the importance of real estate investing and how we can open up more doors for the clients that they have, because they had clients that bought their own residential primary residence. And now they get all this equity in it. So then why not teach them how to tap into that equity and understand the difference between good debt and bad debt? And so I guess I guess they liked the presentation. And we went out for dinner and they decided to present an offer saying, would you like to be a partner? And so what we did essentially was we brought Smart Home Choice into the brokerage to teach the real estate investors on the importance of real estate investing. So it's almost like a marriage. And there really isn't a brokerage in the Durham region that has a real estate investment arm in it. So there's a huge advantage for those realtors in that group. And every single week we do events to teach these realtors on the importance of real estate investing. And so that's the brokerage part. Now there was another question there as well too. I
guess how you structure your businesses, whether you're like actively operating the.
Good question. Yes. So I am a real estate agent as well too. And so one of the things that you learn when you're growing your business is that you should be working on your business, not in your business. However, there are aspects of my business that I still enjoy, and I still enjoy taking clients out. So you may see some posts of me on social media with me out with a client. Those are clients that I want to specifically work with. Now, new investors that are coming in, I have a team. And so most of them are going with those agents, and those Chris and Quentin and Ryan, those guys are solid. They understand real estate investing very well. But my core investors that I work with, or the ones that I want to continue to help and go out with, I'll still continue to go out into the field. So, some people may take a look at that business model and say, well, yeah, but Gary, you should be working on your business. But if you enjoy an aspect of your business that brings you pleasure, then why not continue to do that? And so that's why I still continue to go out in the field, but I don't do it as often as I used to back in the days, or I'm not always like looking for new clients coming in. They're usually reaching out to me saying, hey, Gary, I'm ready to purchase another investment property. I'm like, hey, cool, let's go out. And then it's fun. It's fun because we're laughing, we're joking, we're looking at properties. I'm giving them the pros and cons of each one, and then they're making their decision, and so I enjoy that part of it.
Yeah, you're working with the people that are serious. They're ready to pound. So for you, it's more so let's make offers, let's negotiate a crazy deal, and like let's just get a win-win here, right? So,
right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Actually, I really enjoyed the podcast. I know we're kind of reaching our timeline on the podcast, but I think it was a great episode. I think we talked about a completely different train of thought that a lot of people in the investor community currently try to embody or whatever it is, right? So Gary, like generally this time we like to ask our guests kind of 3 rapid round kind of questions. So what are your goals like 5 years from now, both personal, business, any of your businesses? Where do you really envision yourself?
Good question. I guess got asked this yesterday as well too. Financial freedom is great. Time freedom is great as well too. And I think now focusing on maybe potentially geographical freedom, meaning that I can work wherever I want to work in the world. But still have my business running and operating because I've got the right people, players, partners in place. So I think that's probably kind of what I'm working on next. If I want to, spend a couple months in Costa Rica or, in Europe or Florida or wherever, I can do it and not worry about, I have to be here in the country to allow this thing to continue to keep moving forward.
Yeah, that's an awesome goal. Makes sense as the next step. If you can travel 6 months, 7, 8 months out of the year, why not? Get away from the cold Canadian weather. Second question here is, if you won $10 million and you only had 7 days to spend it, and you cannot spend it all on real estate investing, how would you spend it and why?
Good question. I mean, first, I think I'd have to whiteboard it, right? I'd have to design it. But I think here's what I would do then is I would give a portion of it to give to somebody else to invest for me. I would give a portion of it to charity. I think it's always good to give back. And then I would, probably give a portion to myself to learn how to invest that in maybe other areas and avenues that might allow me to expand my knowledge and experience.
Hey, and if you could have dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would you choose and why?
Tupac and Biggie. I think I would probably do those two to say, man, why did you guys have to do that beef? We lost 2 legends.
Love it. Yeah, I know I'm a big hip hop fan, so I'm happy to hear that answer.
Yeah, I would like to. I think they were my favorite as well too, and it shaped who I was when I was younger.
Okay, off topic. What's your favorite Biggie track?
Woo! Ready to Die.
Yeah.
You know,
okay.
and as it sounds bad to say that, but I think if you are, then you're then ready to live. Right. And I think that's what you have to be, ready to live, like not being scared to, like, just enjoying life. Right. Enjoying life. I know when people ask me this question, like, hey, you know, how are things going? I'm like, man, I woke up today. It's a good day. You know, and I think people get caught up in all these things that they've got to do, and they've got to do this and they've got to do that. And they get caught up in all the small intricacies of life. But, you know, just if you can start the day by saying, man, I'm glad I woke up today, that's a good place to be. Because then now everything else that gets thrown at you, I think you can tackle with a better and a clearer mind.
Yeah, no, I think that song, I know this is off topic. I think that song was all about, like, his life was, you know, like there was nothing going for him. So he was taking chances and opportunities, right? That's why he said he was ready to die. Like, he'll do anything to better his circumstances. Anyway, that's neither here or there. Really appreciate you jumping on, Gary. It was amazing to have you on and have this podcast go a much different direction than what we're usually used to. So designing your lifestyle, that's what you're all about. I'm hoping to take some key takeaways from this and start applying it to my business and life as well. If people want to reach out to you, if they want to attend the Smart Home Choice seminars, learn about investing from you and your community, how could they do so?
Yeah. Thanks for that. But yeah, if they want to learn more about, Smart Home Choice and all the events that we've got going on every single week, you can go to smarthomechoice.ca, put your name, email address in there. You won't miss any of the weekly events that we do every Thursday at either a lunch and learn or an evening event at 8 p.m. If you want to learn more about me specifically in the podcast and any of the mentorships that I do, you can go to garyhibbert.ca.
And you also have your podcast there. Why don't you give a quick rundown on that?
Yeah, so the podcast is called Real Talk with Gary, wealth, health, and everything in between. And I really kind of called it that was because I think that if you're building wealth, it's also important to have health as well, too, because once your health goes away, that's the only thing that's important. So treat your body like a temple. And then the everything in between, I kind of kept that open because I didn't know where I wanted to take the podcast. Because I enjoy talking to different people in different walks of life. And because of that, I just kind of kept it open. I kept it open because I don't know where I wanted to take it. Who knows? But I just want to interview people that are entertaining, people that are successful and have had good times and bad times in their lives, and to share their story with other people so that they can also learn how to live a great life and enjoy the gift that they've been given. This is a gift. This is a gift, right? So don't waste it. Enjoy it.
I love it. Well thought out title for us. We pigeonholed ourselves into real estate investing. Unless we rebrand Mayu. Let's take this combo offline. Joking.
Yeah. Well, you know what though? Rise is good. I like that, right? You know, I think it's good.
Rise Real Estate Investing Podcast. We gotta change it. Cross that part out and change it. But before we wrap up, to all our audience listeners, make sure to like, subscribe, do whatever you can to support this podcast. Helps bring great guests like Gary out here. And until next time, everyone, invest smarter and live better. Take care, all.